My name is Lacey Whitmore, and I'm 63 years old, but 25 years ago, my daughter placed a newborn baby in my arms and made me promise something I would spend the rest of my life regretting. Mom, nobody can ever know about him, Claire whispered. Her face pale as rain slammed against the windows of our home in Asheville, North Carolina. I looked down at the tiny boy sleeping against my chest, then back at my 18-year-old daughter, waiting for an explanation that never came. My husband, Daniel, stood frozen in the hallway, watching us like he already knew something was terribly wrong. I asked Claire who the baby belonged to, but she only shook her head. Please, Mom, just promise me. I should have refused. I should have demanded the truth right there. Instead, I promised. We gave that little boy our last name, raised him as our own, and buried every question that came after. For 25 years, I believed that secret was protecting my family. Then, 3 months before my grandson's wedding, a stranger knocked on my door holding an old photograph of Claire beside the same baby. He stared directly at me and said, "Mrs. Whitmore, that boy was never supposed to be yours." I couldn't breathe. He handed me the photograph, turned around, and walked away before I could stop him. On the back, written in faded black ink, were 4 words that made my hands tremble. He knows everything now. I called the number he left, but no one answered. That night I barely slept. I kept staring at the photograph, wondering who the man beside Claire was, why she had been so terrified 25 years ago, and what exactly my grandson knew. Then just before midnight my phone buzzed. One message appeared on the screen. "Lacey, if you love Ethan, do not let Claire reach him first." I stared at that message for nearly 5 minutes, my thumb hovering over Ethan's number, while my heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. Do not let Claire reach him first. What the heck was that supposed to mean? Claire was his mother, or at least that was what I had believed for 25 years, and suddenly even that felt like something I could no longer say with confidence. Daniel came into the kitchen and found me sitting at the table with the photograph in one hand and my phone in the other. When I showed him the message, his face changed immediately. "Call the stranger," he said. "Right now." I tried the number again, and this time a man answered on the second ring. His voice was calm, almost too calm. "My name is Marcus Hale," he said. "And before you ask, no, I'm not trying to hurt your family. I'm trying to stop something that should have been exposed 25 years ago." I demanded to know what he meant, but he refused to explain over the phone. He told Daniel and me to meet him the next morning at a small cafe outside Greenville, South Carolina, and warned us not to tell Claire where we were going. That last part made my stomach twist even tighter. Why were we supposed to hide from our own daughter? The next morning, Daniel barely spoke during the drive. When we arrived, Marcus was already waiting in the corner booth with a thick brown envelope sitting in front of him. He looked younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, but there was something exhausted in his eyes. Before we even sat down, he pushed the envelope toward me. "Mrs. Whitmore, you need to understand something before you open that," he said. "Your family's story began with a lie." My fingers trembled as I opened it. Inside were copies of hospital records from the night Ethan was born, but the mother's name wasn't Claire Whitmore. It was Rebecca Sloan. I read it again, hoping I had misunderstood, but the words stayed the same. Then Marcus leaned closer and quietly said, "Your daughter gave you a baby that night, Lacey, but he wasn't the baby you think he was." Before I could respond, the cafe door opened behind us, and a voice I recognized whispered, "Mom, please don't believe him." I turned around so quickly that my chair nearly tipped over, and there stood Claire, breathing heavily, her eyes locked on the envelope in my hands. Daniel immediately stood between us. "Claire, what are you doing here?" he asked, but she barely looked at him. She stared at me with the same terrified expression I had seen 25 years ago when she first placed that newborn in my arms. "Mom, you have to come home with me," she whispered. "Not here." I felt anger rising inside me. "No, Claire. Not this time. You've had 25 years to tell me the truth." Her lips began trembling, and for a moment, I thought she might finally confess everything. Instead, she looked at Marcus and said, "You promised me nobody would find that file." My blood went cold. "What file?" I asked. Marcus stood slowly and said, "The file that explains what happened to Rebecca Sloan's baby." Claire closed her eyes. "Mom, I never stole Ethan." "Then tell me what you did," I snapped. She sat down across from me, tears already running down her cheeks. She told us that 25 years ago, when she was 18, she had been volunteering at the hospital where she gave birth. That night, she discovered something strange in the maternity ward. A wealthy family from Charlotte had arrived demanding privacy after their newborn grandson was supposedly born with a serious condition. Hours later, Claire was told the baby had died. But she didn't believe it. She had seen the baby alive. She had even seen a nurse carry him into another room. Then someone warned her to forget what she had witnessed. Claire admitted she had been terrified. But she still followed the baby because she believed he was in danger. That was when she discovered Rebecca Sloan crying outside a locked hospital room, being told her own newborn had died. Claire had no idea what to do, so she took the baby and brought him to us. "I thought I was saving him," she whispered. "But why did you make me promise never to tell him?" I asked. Claire looked directly at me, and her answer shattered me. "Because the people who took him were still looking for him." Marcus suddenly pulled another document from his coat. "That's only half the story," he said. "Because Rebecca never believed her son was dead." He placed the paper on the table. It was a letter dated 25 years earlier, signed by Rebecca herself. The final sentence made my heart stop. "If my son is alive, I will find him." For several seconds, nobody at that table moved. I kept staring at Rebecca's signature, unable to understand how a woman I had never met could have written about the same baby I had tucked into bed every night for 25 years. Then Marcus slid another document across the table. "There's something else," he said. "Rebecca didn't just believe her son was alive. She spent years searching for him." I looked at Claire, and she covered her face with both hands. "I was scared," she whispered. "Every time I thought about telling you, I remembered what they threatened to do." "Who are they?" Daniel demanded. Claire shook her head. "I don't know all of them, but one of them was connected to the hospital, and another was part of the family that wanted the baby hidden." Before I could ask another question, my phone started ringing. It was Ethan. I froze. After everything we had just learned, seeing his name on my screen felt terrifying. I answered carefully. "Hi, sweetheart." His voice sounded normal at first, but then he asked, "Grandma, why did Mom lie to me about the hospital?" My heart dropped. I looked at Claire, and she immediately began crying. Ethan continued, "I found an old file in the attic. It has my birth date, Mom's name, and another woman's name written across the top." I closed my eyes. The secret was no longer ours to control. "Ethan, where are you?" I asked. "At home," he said. "But there's something else." His voice became quieter. "There's a photograph of Mom holding me at the hospital, and someone wrote on the back, 'He belongs to Rebecca.'" Daniel looked at Marcus, who suddenly seemed worried for the first time. "Tell Ethan not to leave the house," Marcus said. I repeated the warning, but Ethan laughed nervously. "Grandma, what's going on?" I wanted to tell him everything, but Claire grabbed my hand and shook her head. Then Ethan said something that made me realize we had already waited too long. I already called the woman named Rebecca Sloan. Nobody breathed. "She's coming here tomorrow." The call ended, and I felt tears burning my eyes. 25 years ago, I had promised Claire I would protect the boy in her arms. Now that boy was a grown man standing on the edge of discovering the truth himself. The next morning, Ethan arrived with a woman beside him. The moment I saw her face, I knew who she was. Rebecca looked at Ethan, covered her mouth, and began to cry. She whispered, "I knew you were alive." Ethan stared at her, confused and heartbroken. Then he turned toward Claire and asked the question none of us could escape anymore. "Why did you let me believe she was dead?"